Story number 1. Snowman in the Forest. The Ural Mountains had always held a dark allure for me. As a seasoned mountaineer and amateur historian, I was fascinated by the legends and mysteries that shrouded these ancient peaks. The Dyatlov Pass incident of 1959, where 9 experienced hikers met their untimely and inexplicable deaths, was the most haunting story of them all. Determined to uncover the truth behind those tragic events, I organized an expedition to retrace their steps, hoping to shed light on one of the most enduring mysteries of the Soviet era. My team consisted of 5 members. Myself, Elena, a local guide with extensive knowledge of the Ural terrain; Dmitry, a geologist with a knack for uncovering hidden geological formations; Anya, a seasoned photographer eager to document our journey; Ivan, a survival expert; and Mikhail, a historian specializing in Soviet-era expeditions. Together, we set out in late November, the air crisp and the snow beginning to blanket the landscape in anticipation of the harsh winter ahead. The first few days were uneventful. We navigated the winding trails with relative ease, the towering pines and rugged peaks creating a picturesque yet foreboding backdrop. Each evening, we set up camp near frozen streams and dense thickets, sharing stories around the fire and marveling at the untouched beauty of the wilderness. Yet, beneath the surface, an undercurrent of unease began to take hold, especially as we neared Dyatlov Pass. On the 3rd night, as the temperature plummeted and the wind howled through the forest, we settled into our tents, the darkness outside pressing in on us. The sky was a blanket of stars, the northern lights occasionally flickering in a silent dance. It was during this stillness that Elena first heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from outside her tent. At first, she dismissed it as the wind or a branch scraping against the fabric. But the sound persisted, growing more distinct and deliberate. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, nudging Dmitry awake. He listened intently, his brow furrowing. "It's probably just the wind playing tricks on us. Old trees make all sorts of noises in storms like this." We tried to convince ourselves to ignore it, but the tapping continued, echoing through the night like a distant, haunted heartbeat. The following morning, we discovered strange footprints leading away from our campsite, disappearing into the dense forest. They were larger than any animal tracks we had seen, with elongated toes and an unsettling symmetry that made our skin crawl. Determined to understand the source of these disturbances, we decided to investigate. Armed with flashlights and a sense of trepidation, we ventured deeper into the forest, following the trail of footprints. The snow was thick underfoot, each step muffled by the pristine blanket covering the ground. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees towering like silent sentinels watching our every move. Hours passed as we trekked through the unforgiving terrain, the cold biting into our skin despite our heavy gear. Just as exhaustion began to set in, we stumbled upon a clearing illuminated by the soft glow of moonlight filtering through the canopy. In the center stood a figure, a towering snowman, eerily lifelike, with coal-black eyes that seemed to bore into our souls. Its arms, crafted from branches, reached out as if inviting us closer. Yet there was an undeniable malevolence in its presence. "Stay back," Ivan warned, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. But curiosity got the better of us. As we approached, the snowman began to move, his head tilting to follow our every step. Anya raised her camera, attempting to capture the phenomenon, but the device malfunctioned, the screen flickering with static before going dark. Palpable tension filled the air, the snowman standing motionless once more. Suddenly, the ground beneath us quaked, a low rumble resonating through the forest. Trees swayed violently, and the snow around us began to swirl in a frenzied dance. From the shadows emerged more snowmen, each one identical in their haunting features, encircling us with an unspoken threat. Panic set in as we realized we were surrounded, the malevolent force of the forest closing in on us. "We need to get back," Elena urged, her eyes wide with fear. "Now!" But as we turned to flee, the path behind us had vanished. The snow piling up to block our escape. The snowmen advanced, their coal eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. Mikhail, ever the skeptic, tried to rationalize the situation. It's probably a hallucination caused by the altitude and the cold. We need to stay calm. But his words did little to quell the rising fear within us. The snowmen reached out, their branches brushing against our skin, sending icy chills through our bodies. It was then that the whispers began, a chorus of sorrowful voices carried by the wind, recounting tales of lost souls and unfinished business. The air grew thick with their lament, the weight of their pain pressing down on us. In a desperate bid for survival, we huddled together, trying to find a way to break free from the spectral grip of the snowmen. Dmitri noticed a faint glow emanating from the base of one of the figures, a flickering light that seemed to pulse with life. "Maybe there's something here," he whispered, inching closer to investigate. As he reached out to touch the light, the snowmen recoiled, their forms dissipating into the night like smoke. The path behind us slowly reappeared, the snow clearing away to reveal the trail we had followed. Seizing the opportunity, we sprinted down the trail, the whispers fading behind us as the forest seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. We didn't stop until we reached our campsite, the exhaustion and adrenaline coursing through our veins making it difficult to move. That night, we huddled in our tents, the memory of the snowmen lingering like a ghostly shadow. Sleep was elusive, our minds replaying the terrifying encounter, the sorrowful whispers echoing in our dreams. The following morning, we packed up our gear with a newfound sense of urgency, determined to leave Dyatlov Pass behind us. As we trekked back through the forest, the footprints we had followed now led us safely to the edge of the clearing, the malevolent presence seemingly banished by our departure. Back at base camp, we reported our findings to the authorities. Our story met with skepticism and disbelief. The official explanation remained elusive, the true nature of the Dyatlov Pass incident continuing to baffle investigators for decades to come. But for us, the memory of the snowmen and the sorrowful whispers remained a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden in the heart of the wilderness. Years have passed since that fateful expedition, and the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most enduring and haunting mysteries of the 20th century. For me, the experience left an indelible mark, a testament to the thin veil between the natural and the supernatural, and the enduring power of sorrow to bind souls to the mortal world. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of those sorrowful whispers carried by the breeze. A haunting reminder of the night we encountered the snowmen in the forest and glimpsed the lingering pain of lost souls forever trapped in the snow-covered wilderness. Story number 2. Arm from under the ice. Winter in the Canadian wilderness is a test of both endurance and spirit. The biting cold, relentless winds, and expansive stretches of untouched snow create a landscape that is as beautiful as it is unforgiving. For me, Mark Thompson, a seasoned fisherman and outdoor enthusiast, the allure of solitude on Lake Frostbite was irresistible. It promised a respite from the chaos of city life, a chance to reconnect with nature and myself. I arrived at the lake on a crisp December morning, the sky a clear, pale blue with the sun low on the horizon. The frozen expanse stretched out before me, broken only by the occasional shadow of a lone pine or the shimmer of ice reflecting the weak winter light. I set up my equipment by the shore, the familiar ritual bringing a sense of calm despite the cold that seeped through my layers of clothing. The first day passed quietly. I spent hours casting my line into the icy waters, the silence of the forest around me a stark contrast to the noise of urban existence. As evening approached, I built a small fire near my cabin, its warmth a welcome comfort against the chill that enveloped the area. Dinner was simple, canned stew heated over the flames, and I settled in with a book, the flickering light casting dancing shadows on the walls. That night, as I lay in bed, The howling wind outside seemed to carry with it whispers of the past. The isolation of the lake made every sound amplify, turning the ordinary creaks of the old wooden cabin into eerie echoes. I tried to push the unsettling thoughts aside, reminding myself that I was alone, safe in my temporary sanctuary. The following morning, I woke to a blanket of fresh snow. The world outside transformed into a monochromatic wonderland. Determined to make the most of my trip, I ventured out early, the cold biting at my face as I trudged through the deep snow. Hours passed without incident, the only signs of life being the tracks of small animals and the occasional call of a distant bird. It was late afternoon when I decided to explore a less traveled part of the lake. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ice and painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. As I approached a particularly dense area of the shoreline, I noticed something unusual, a glimmer beneath the ice, catching the fading light in a way that seemed almost unnatural. Curiosity piqued. I grabbed my ice auger and began to drill through the thick layer of ice. The effort was strenuous, my hands numb and shaking from the cold, but the mysterious reflection drove me forward. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the auger pierced the ice, revealing a dark, frozen surface beneath. Peering into the depths, I saw it, a hand, pale and lifeless, reaching upward as if desperately trying to break free from its icy prison. My heart raced, a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through me. I stared, unable to look away, as the hand continued its futile struggle against the weight of the ice. "Jesus, what the hell?" I muttered, my voice barely audible over the howling wind. I scrambled back, my mind racing to make sense of the horrifying sight. The logical part of me wanted to dismiss it as a trick of the light or a partially submerged animal. But the reality of a human limb protruding from the ice was undeniable. My thoughts turned to the local legends, tales of lost souls and tragic accidents that had plagued this area for years. But I had always considered them mere folklore, stories spun by frightened locals to explain the unexplainable. Determined to get a closer look, I decided to break the ice around the hand, hoping to uncover more about its origin. As I worked, the temperature seemed to drop even further, the cold now a palpable presence that pressed against my skin. My breath came in short, desperate gasps as I chipped away at the ice, revealing more of the grotesque limb. Suddenly, the ice beneath my feet gave way, sending me plunging into the freezing water below. The shock of the cold stole my breath, my body thrashing as I struggled to break free from the icy grip. Gasping for air, I managed to pull myself onto the slippery surface, coughing and shivering uncontrollably. Dazed and disoriented, I stumbled back to the shore, my mind reeling from the encounter. As I lay there, wrapped in my emergency blanket, the reality of what I had seen settled in. A human arm, frozen and lifeless, emerging from the depths of Lake Frostbite. The questions that flooded my mind were as chilling as the cold that still clung to me. The next morning, I contacted the local authorities, reporting the disturbing discovery. Within hours, a team of search and rescue personnel arrived, their presence a mix of professionalism and concern. They confirmed the existence of the arm and began a thorough investigation, combing through the lake and the surrounding area for any signs of the missing person. Days turned into weeks, and the investigation revealed little about the identity of the deceased. The person to whom the arm belonged remained a mystery, their story lost to time and the unforgiving winter. The only clue was a set of faded footprints leading away from the shore, disappearing into the dense forest that bordered the lake. As winter progressed, the story of the frozen arm became a grim topic of conversation among the locals. Theories abounded. Some spoke of tragic accidents, while others whispered about supernatural forces at play. I found myself drawn into the mystery, unable to shake the image of that desperate, lifeless hand reaching for freedom. One particularly harsh night, as the wind howled with a ferocity that rattled the windows, I decided to return to the lake. The drive was treacherous, the snowstorm making visibility nearly impossible. But something compelled me to seek answers. Climbing back onto the frozen surface, I made my way to the spot where I had found the arm, the memories of that night fresh in my mind. The lake was eerily quiet, the snow muffling all sounds except the relentless wind. I set up my equipment once more, hoping to capture any unusual activity that might shed light on the mystery. Hours passed with no sign of movement, the darkness of the night enveloping me in its oppressive embrace. Just as I was about to call it a night, a faint sound reached my ears, a soft, rhythmic tapping, eerily similar to the heartbeat of the lake itself. My pulse quickened as I followed the sound, my flashlight cutting through the darkness to reveal a figure standing on the ice. There she was, a woman with long, flowing hair and a pale, ethereal beauty. Her eyes, deep and sorrowful, seemed to hold the weight of countless untold stories. She stood motionless, her gaze fixed on me, the same haunting presence I had encountered weeks before. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the howling wind. She remained silent, her expression unreadable. Slowly, she began to move toward me, each step deliberate and graceful, leaving no footprints in her wake. The air around us grew colder, the very essence of the lake's sorrow palpable in her presence. "Why are you here?" I asked, unable to hide the fear and curiosity in my voice. Her lips parted slightly, and a soft, melancholic melody began to play, a haunting lullaby that seemed to echo the whispers of the wind. The notes carried with them a sense of longing and despair, filling the air with an overwhelming sadness. As she drew closer, I felt a connection, a shared pain that transcended the boundaries between life and death. Her hand reached out, fingers trembling as they hovered above the ice. "Help me," she whispered, her voice a ghostly echo that resonated deep within me. Understanding dawned on me. She was trapped, bound to the lake by her own sorrow and the tragedy that had taken her life. Determined to free her, I reached out, my hand meeting hers in a cold, lifeless grip. The moment our fingers touched, a surge of energy coursed through me, the world around us shifting and changing. Visions of that fateful night flooded my mind. Memories of a woman losing her way in the storm, her desperate attempts to find safety, and the tragic end that had left her spirit bound to the icy depths of Lake Frostbite. The realization hit me with the force of the storm itself. Her story was one of loss and unresolved pain, a tale that had been lost to time and the unforgiving winter. "Tie me back," I murmured, understanding that she needed closure, a way to release the sorrow that held her captive. The vision shifted, showing me a path through the forest, illuminated by the soft glow of the moonlight. It was a path that led to a clearing where the remnants of her life lay hidden, old photographs, personal belongings, and the evidence of the tragedy that had defined her existence. Guided by the vision, I set out to gather the remnants of her past, each item a piece of the puzzle that would unlock her path to peace. Days turned into weeks as I meticulously collected each artifact, piecing together the story of a woman whose life had been torn apart by circumstances beyond her control. With each discovery, the presence of the woman grew stronger, her sorrow transforming into a sense of hope. Finally, with the last piece of the puzzle in place, I returned to the lake, the artifacts laid out before me in a sacred space by the shore. Holding them in my hands, I felt the weight of her pain and the strength of my resolve. As I completed the ritual, the air around me shimmered with a warm, golden light. The woman appeared once more, her eyes filled with gratitude and a serene acceptance. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now carrying a sense of peace. With a final, lingering look, she faded into the light, her presence dissolving into the tranquil beauty of the winter landscape. The lake, once a site of tragedy and sorrow, now held a sense of closure, the echoes of the past finally finding their peace. Driving away from Lake Frostbite, the first rays of dawn breaking through the storm clouds, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The mystery that had haunted the lake for decades had been unraveled, the spirits of the past finally able to move on from their unresolved pain. The frozen arm, once a symbol of tragedy, was now a reminder of the enduring power of empathy and the belief that every soul deserves a chance to find peace. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of that haunting lullaby carried by the breeze, a poignant reminder of the night we listened to a restless spirit and helped her find her way home. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the belief that even in the darkest of winters, the light of understanding can thaw the deepest of sorrows. Story number 3. The Bell in the Snowy Night. Winter in the Colorado Rockies is a season of stark beauty and relentless cold. The mountains stand tall, their peaks hidden beneath thick blankets of snow, while the dense forests whisper secrets with every gust of icy wind. My name is Thomas Miller, a 45-year-old father of 2, married to Sarah, a dedicated nurse. We decided to spend our winter holidays in a secluded cabin nestled deep within these mountains, seeking solace from the chaos of our everyday lives. The cabin was a charming, rustic structure with sturdy wooden walls and large windows that framed the breathtaking snowy landscape, surrounded by towering pines and overlooking a frozen lake. It seemed like the perfect retreat. We arrived on a particularly cold December evening, the sun dipping below the horizon much earlier than usual, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. After settling in, we made ourselves comfortable by the roaring fireplace, the warmth a welcome contrast to the bitter chill outside. Our children, Emily and Jack, were excited about the adventure, their eyes sparkling with anticipation of sledding, building snowmen, and exploring the winter wonderland. Little did we know, the serenity of our winter escape was about to be shattered by an inexplicable and terrifying mystery. That first night passed without incident. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but inside, the cabin was a haven of warmth and safety. We shared stories, played board games, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of family time. As midnight approached, exhaustion took over, and we all drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. It was in the dead of night that it happened. I was awakened by the sound of a bell ringing, clear and resonant, echoing through the stillness of the night. At first, I thought it was a trick of the wind or perhaps a distant sound carried by the storm. But the ringing persisted, each toll more deliberate than the last, sending a chill down my spine. I glanced at Sarah, who was asleep beside me, and saw her stirring slightly but not fully waking. Curiosity and unease compelled me to investigate. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake the children, and moved quietly towards the front of the cabin. The sound of the bell grew louder as I approached the window of our bedroom. My heart pounded in my chest as I peered out into the darkness. The snowstorm raging outside. Through the thick snowfall, I could just make out the outline of an old-fashioned bell hanging from a nearby pine tree. It swung gently back and forth, the metal ring producing the haunting sound that had woken me. Strangely, there was no one else in sight, no footprints in the snow, no sign of life except the endless white expanse. As I watched, transfixed by the eerie spectacle, I noticed something even more unsettling. Strange, muddled footprints began to appear on the freshly fallen snow, leading directly from the bell to the window of our bedroom. The footprints were large and irregular, with an unsettling symmetry that made my skin crawl. They seemed to move with a purpose, as if someone or something was trying to communicate. I reached out to pull the curtain aside, my hand trembling, but froze as the footprints abruptly stopped at the edge of the window. It was as if the person had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. My mind raced with questions. Who was this mysterious visitor? Why were they ringing the bell? And what did those footprints signify? Determined to find answers, I returned to bed, hoping to dismiss the incident as a figment of my imagination. But sleep eluded me, and I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the image of the bell and the enigmatic footprints. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the landscape transformed into a glistening white wonderland. We decided to explore the surrounding area, hoping to uncover any clues about the previous night's events. Equipped with our snowshoes and bundled up against the lingering cold, we ventured out into the pristine wilderness. As we walked along the frozen lake, the tranquility of the morning was deceptive. The footprints I had seen the night before were still fresh, leading from the pine tree where the bell hung to the very spot where our cabin stood. I followed them, my curiosity driving me forward. The footprints disappeared after a short distance, leaving me standing alone in the vast expanse of snow. Confusion and frustration set in. If there was no one else around, how could these footprints have appeared? And what was the purpose of the bells ringing? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, I decided to return to the cabin and share my findings with Sarah. That evening, as we sat by the fireplace once more, I recounted the night's events to her. Sarah listened intently, her expression a mixture of concern and skepticism. "Maybe it's just a prank," she suggested gently. "Someone living nearby might have set it up to scare us." I considered her words but couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more sinister at play. The lack of any other signs of life made the prank theory less plausible. We agreed to keep a closer watch and document any further strange occurrences. True to our fears, the disturbances continued. Each night, the bell would ring at midnight, accompanied by the appearance of those mysterious footprints leading to our bedroom window. One particularly frigid night, the bell's toll was followed by a series of soft whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cabin. The whispers were indistinct, a jumbled mix of voices that filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. Unable to bear the growing unease, I decided to set up a camera to capture any activity during the night. The next morning, we reviewed the footage, our hearts sinking as we watched the events unfold. The bell rang, the camera captured the mysterious footprints, and the window became obscured by a shadowy figure standing outside, staring directly into the room before vanishing without a trace. Shaken by the revelation, we sought out the local authorities, explaining the strange occurrences and presenting the footage as evidence. The officers arrived promptly, their expressions a blend of skepticism and concern. They conducted a thorough search of the surrounding area but found no signs of intrusion or any other explanations for the phenomena we had experienced. Despite their assurances, the strange events persisted, growing more intense with each passing night. The bells ringing became more frequent, the footprints longer and more distinct, and the whispers grew louder, almost pleading in their sorrow. It was clear that whatever was haunting our cabin was desperate to communicate, to reach out from the darkness that enveloped it. Driven by a need to understand and help whatever soul was trapped within the icy grip of the Colorado winter, I delved into the history of the cabin and the surrounding area. What I discovered was a tale of tragedy and unresolved pain. Decades ago, the cabin had been owned by a solitary man named Heinrich Wagner, a reclusive figure who kept to himself and rarely ventured into town. One winter, a severe storm hit the region, trapping Heinrich and his young daughter, Greta, inside the cabin. As the snow piled up outside, Heinrich struggled to keep the fire burning and Greta safe from the freezing temperatures. Days turned into weeks, and with no rescue in sight, desperation and despair consumed Heinrich. One fateful night, as the storm raged outside, Heinrich succumbed to the cold, leaving Greta alone in the cabin. She spent countless nights crying for her father, her sorrow echoing through the wooden walls until the snowstorm finally subsided. When rescue teams arrived, they found the cabin empty, save for the traces of Greta's presence, the footprints, the handprints on the window, and the lingering echoes of her cries. It was believed that Greta's spirit remained, forever bound to the cabin by her unending grief and the desperate attempts to reach out for help. The bell, Heinrich's favorite keepsake, became a haunting symbol of their tragic fate, ringing out in a futile attempt to call for rescue that never came. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to honor Greta's memory and help her find the peace that had eluded her for so long. I reached out to a local medium, hoping to bridge the gap between the living and the restless spirit that haunted our cabin. On a particularly cold night, with the wind howling outside and the snow piling higher than ever, the medium arrived, her presence a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. She set up her equipment, candles flickering in the dim light, and began to communicate with Greta's spirit. "Greta, we are here to help you," she called out softly, her voice steady and compassionate. "Tell us what you need to find peace." The room grew colder, the air thick with anticipation as the medium's voice blended with the lingering whispers of the past. Slowly, Greta's presence materialized before us, her ghostly figure bathed in a soft, ethereal light. Her eyes, once filled with sorrow, now held a glimmer of hope. "I can't stay here," Greta whispered, her voice a haunting melody. "I need to find my father, to let go of this pain." Understanding the depth of her anguish, I reached out, my hand trembling. "We're here to help you, Greta. How can we bring you peace?" The medium guided us through a series of steps, lighting candles, sharing stories of Heinrich and Greta, and performing a ritual of remembrance. As we honored their memory, the bell rang once more, its toll resonating through the cabin like a final farewell. Gradually, the atmosphere in the cabin began to change. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by a warm, comforting presence. Greta's spirit smiled, her form becoming more defined as the sorrow that had held her captive dissipated. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "I can finally rest." With a final, lingering glance, Greta's spirit faded into the light, leaving behind a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. The bells ringing ceased, the echoes of the past replaced by the gentle sounds of winter settling in. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences in the cabin ceased. The footprints and handprints vanished, and the cabin felt warmer, the lingering shadows replaced by a serene tranquility. We knew that Greta had found the closure she so desperately needed, her spirit finally able to move on from the tragedy that had bound her to the icy wilderness. Reflecting on our experience, I realized the profound impact of empathy and understanding in the face of sorrow. By honoring Greta's memory and helping her find peace, we had not only lifted the haunting presence from our cabin, but also forged a deeper connection with the past and the enduring power of compassion. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of the bell's toll carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night we listened to a restless spirit and helped her find peace. It serves as a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the belief that every soul deserves a chance to find its way home. Story number 4. The Man at the Door. Winter in Alaska is a test of both resilience and solitude. The unforgiving cold, relentless snowstorms, and vast, empty landscapes create an environment that demands respect and fortitude. For me, John Harper, the isolation of living alone in my remote cabin nestled deep within the Alaskan wilderness was both a sanctuary and a challenge. The cabin, with its sturdy wooden walls and large windows overlooking endless stretches of snow-covered terrain, was my retreat from the chaos of modern life. Yet, it was precisely this isolation that set the stage for a night that would forever alter my perception of reality. It was mid-December, and the days were short, with the sun barely peeking over the horizon before plunging the world into darkness once more. The snow had been falling steadily for weeks, transforming the landscape into a monochromatic expanse of white. The wind howled through the pine trees, carrying with it the whispers of the wilderness and the occasional creak of the old cabin settling under the weight of accumulated snow. That night, as I lay in bed bundled up in layers of blankets, the silence of the cabin was both comforting and eerie. The only sounds were the gentle crackling of the fireplace and the distant roar of the storm outside. I had grown accustomed to the solitude, finding peace in the stillness and the rhythmic dance of the flames. Yet, as midnight approached, An unexpected disturbance shattered the calm. A soft, insistent knocking echoed through the cabin, each tap resonating with a sense of urgency that jolted me awake. My heart raced as I sat up, the warmth of the blankets contrasting sharply with the cold fear gripping me. The knocking came again, louder this time, persistent and deliberate, as if someone or something was determined to gain entry. I exchanged a glance with myself, rationalizing the sound. Perhaps it was a branch scraping against the window, or the wind finding its way through a crack in the door. Trying to steady my nerves, I decided to investigate, pulling on my thick robe and slipping out of bed. Approaching the front door, I could see the storm raging outside, snow swirling in chaotic patterns against the glass panes. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling slightly. With a cautious twist, I opened the door to reveal nothing but the blinding whiteness of the storm. The world outside was an unbroken expanse of snow, the landscape indistinguishable in the heavy snowfall. Disappointed and confused, I closed the door, only to be met with another round of knocking, this time emanating from the back door. My pulse quickened as I glanced around the cabin, realizing that the sounds were not random but deliberate attempts to break in. I moved towards the window, peering out into the storm, searching for any sign of movement. All I saw was the endless white, the snow obscuring everything beyond a few feet. Turning back to the room, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Footprints in the freshly fallen snow leading directly from the front door to the back window. They were large, irregular, and unlike any tracks left by wildlife I was familiar with. The footprints seemed to stop abruptly a few feet from the window, as if the person or entity had vanished into thin air. A sense of unease settled over me as I tried to make sense of the bizarre occurrence. The idea of someone infiltrating my sanctuary was terrifying, but the absence of any trace of a person outside made it all the more perplexing. I decided to secure all the doors and windows, bolting them tightly and checking for any possible entry points. Yet, the feeling of being watched persisted, an invisible presence lurking just beyond the edge of my perception. As the night wore on, the knocking continued sporadically, each instance more unnerving than the last. I found myself jumping at every sound, the fear gnawing at my sanity. Determined to confront the source, I grabbed a flashlight and a sturdy flashlight beam, making my way to the back door where the strange footprints had originated. Approaching the window, I shone the flashlight into the darkness, the beam cutting through the storm's fury. The snow swirled violently, making it difficult to see anything beyond a few feet. Suddenly, the beam of light caught something, a shadowy figure standing outside, its outline blurred by the swirling snow. The figure remained motionless, staring directly into the cabin with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I froze, unable to move or speak, as the figure began to dissolve into the snowstorm, fading away as quickly as it had appeared. My mind raced, grappling with the impossible reality of what I had just witnessed. Was it a hallucination brought on by the isolation and stress of the storm, or something far more sinister? As the first light of dawn began to creep into the sky, the storm finally subsided, leaving behind a tranquil stillness. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the living room floor, trying to process the night's events. The footprints had vanished, the back window sealed tight with a fresh layer of snow, and the cabin felt quieter, almost peaceful once more. Yet, the memory of the shadowy figure lingered, a haunting presence that refused to fade. The next day, driven by a need for answers, I decided to venture into the nearby village, a small community nestled a few miles away from the cabin. The villagers were a tight-knit group, their lives intertwined with the harsh rhythms of the Alaskan winter. I approached the local tavern, hoping to find someone who could shed light on the mysterious occurrences. Inside, the warmth and lively chatter provided a stark contrast to the cold isolation of the cabin. I sat at the bar, ordering a cup of hot tea, and struck up a conversation with an elderly man named Lars, who had lived in the area all his life. Lars, Have you ever heard of anything strange happening around my cabin? I asked, lowering my voice to avoid attracting too much attention. He looked thoughtful, his weathered face creasing into a frown. Strange things, you say? This part of the wilderness is known for its harsh conditions. But every now and then, folks talk about odd sightings and unexplained noises. Some say it's the spirits of those who lost their lives to the unforgiving winter. I leaned in, intrigued. Spirits? Like ghosts? Lars nodded slowly. Many believe that the spirits linger, unable to move on from their tragic end. Dyatlov Pass, where the incident occurred back in '59, is just west of here. Some say those lost souls wander the forests, searching for a way to peace. His words sent a chill down my spine, connecting the dots between the Dyatlov Pass tragedy and the eerie events at my cabin. The idea that the spirits of the lost hikers could be responsible for the knocking and the mysterious footprints was both terrifying and compelling. Determined to help put their restless spirits to peace, I sought out a local medium, a woman named Ingrid, known for her ability to communicate with the supernatural. She agreed to meet me at my cabin, her presence a beacon of hope amidst the lingering darkness. That night, under the light of a full moon, Ingrid arrived, bringing with her a sense of calm and purpose. She set up her equipment, lighting candles and arranging crystals around the room to create a protective circle. As the storm clouds parted, the crisp night air filled the cabin, the silence heavy with anticipation. "We're here to help the lost souls find peace," Ingrid began, her voice steady and reassuring. "We need to open our minds and hearts to communicate with them." I joined her in the ritual, focusing on the intention of offering solace to the spirits trapped within the icy grip of the Alaskan wilderness. As we chanted and meditated, the atmosphere in the cabin shifted, the air thick with a palpable energy. The room grew colder, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further, and a spectral figure materialized before us, the very shadowy figure I had seen outside. Its presence was both sorrowful and desperate, the pain in its hollow eyes reflecting the anguish of its untimely demise. "I cannot move on," the figure whispered, its voice echoing through the room like a haunting melody. "We are lost, searching for peace." Ingrid continued the ritual, her voice weaving a bridge between the living and the dead. "We honor your memory and acknowledge your suffering. You are not forgotten." As she spoke, more apparitions began to materialize, their forms translucent and ethereal, each one carrying the weight of untold stories and unresolved pain. The air was filled with their whispers, a chorus of sorrow and longing that tugged at my very soul. "We were lost in the storm," one spirit intoned, her voice filled with grief. "Trapped and unable to find our way. Help us remember who we were." Another pleaded, his tone desperate. "Guide us to peace." Moved by their plight, I reached out, my hand trembling as I placed it gently on the spectral figure's shoulder. "We are here to help you find peace. Let us guide you to the light." A surge of warmth enveloped the room, the oppressive cold lifting as the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the ether with expressions of gratitude and relief. The once haunting presence of the shadowy figure was replaced by a serene calm, the spirits finally finding the closure they had long been denied. As the first light of dawn broke through the windows, the cabin felt transformed, no longer a place of fear and isolation, but a sanctuary of peace and understanding. The memory of that night lingered, a testament to the power of empathy and the belief that even the lost souls of the wilderness deserve a chance to find their way home. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences ceased, the knocking and the mysterious footprints becoming distant memories. Life returned to normal, the snow-covered landscape once again a symbol of the beauty and harshness of nature. Yet, the experience left an indelible mark on me, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of compassion to bridge that divide. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of that haunting whisper carried by the breeze. A poignant reminder of the night we listened to the cries of the lost and helped them find their way home. It serves as a testament to the enduring belief that every soul deserves peace, and that, even in the darkest of winters, the light of understanding and empathy can thaw the deepest of sorrows. Story number 5. Red Eyes in the Snowy Night. Winter in Norway is a season of unparalleled beauty and relentless harshness. The snow blankets the landscape in a pristine white silence, transforming the dense forests into ethereal wonderlands that seem untouched by time. My name is Ingrid Larson, a 32-year-old graphic designer who thrives on the solitude that such environments offer. I had always found solace in the quietude of nature, far removed from the cacophony of city life. This particular December, I decided to embark on a solo road trip through the remote regions of northern Norway, seeking inspiration and a much-needed break. The journey began smoothly. The winding roads meandered through towering pine forests and past frozen lakes, each mile deepening my sense of peace. My destination was a secluded cabin nestled in the heart of the Utsjoki National Park, a place rumored to be both breathtakingly beautiful and mysteriously eerie. As dusk approached, the sky painted itself in hues of pink and orange, the fading light casting long shadows across the snow-covered terrain. By the time I arrived at the cabin, night had fully descended. The sun had retreated, leaving behind a blanket of darkness illuminated only by the soft glow of the moonlight reflecting off the snow. The cabin stood solitary, its wooden exterior weathered by countless winters, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. It was everything I had hoped for: remote, quiet, and enveloped by nature's serene embrace. After unpacking, I settled in for the night, lighting a fire in the stone fireplace that crackled and popped, sending warm tendrils of heat into the room. I made myself comfortable with a book, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional howl of the wind outside and the distant call of an owl. Around midnight, the tranquility was abruptly shattered by a series of sharp, rhythmic knocks at the front door. My heart skipped a beat as I glanced towards the window, half expecting to see a neighbor or perhaps a lost traveler seeking shelter. But the window was framed with thick snow, and the darkness outside offered no clues. I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps a branch had fallen, or the wind was playing tricks on me, shaking off the unease. I returned to my book, hoping to drown out the unsettling noise. Minutes later, the knocking resumed, more insistent this time. My anxiety heightened as I stood up, the warmth of the fire contrasting sharply with the chill that crept up my spine. I approached the window cautiously, peering out into the inky blackness. The snow continued to fall relentlessly, blanketing everything in a uniform white. Nothing stirred outside, no sign of movement or presence. The door was locked tight, yet the knocking persisted, echoing through the silent cabin like a sinister heartbeat. Summoning my courage, I made my way to the door, each step heavy with dread. Gripping the handle tightly, I took a deep breath and opened it, expecting to find an explanation for the mysterious knocks. But there was nothing, only the vast, empty expanse of snow-covered forest stretching into the darkness. The wind howled past me, carrying with it the muffled sounds of the storm. I closed the door, frustration and fear battling within me. As I turned to retreat, something caught my eye, a set of footprints leading away from the door, etched into the fresh snow. They were large and oddly shaped, unlike any animal tracks I had ever seen. My pulse quickened as I followed them with my gaze, the footprints disappearing abruptly a few feet away, as if the walker had vanished into thin air. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, the realization that I was not alone in this desolate place gripping me with icy fingers. Determined to uncover the source of the disturbance, I decided to investigate further. I grabbed a flashlight and ventured outside, the cold biting at my cheeks and hands. The storm had intensified, the snow swirling violently around me, reducing visibility to mere feet. following the trail of footprints. I navigated through the dense forest, the howling wind making it difficult to concentrate. The footprints led me to a small clearing, illuminated by the faint light of my flashlight. In the center stood a lone figure, partially obscured by the falling snow. As I approached cautiously, my heart pounded in my chest. The figure remained still, his presence unnerving and inexplicably sad. Drawing closer, I could make out the outline of a woman, her back to me, dressed in a tattered coat that seemed to blend seamlessly with the surrounding darkness. Her long hair, matted with snow, cascaded down her back, and her posture was hunched, as if burdened by an invisible weight. "Hello," I called out softly, my voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. "Are you okay?" She remained silent, continuing to stare into the void of the forest. I took another step forward, the crunch of the snow beneath my boots sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. Suddenly, she turned around, and my blood ran cold. Her face was pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow and filled with an unending sorrow that seemed to pierce through my very soul. They were not just any eyes, they glowed with an unnatural red light, burning with a malevolent intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "What do you want?" I managed to stammer, backing away slowly. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound emerged. Instead, the air around us grew colder, the snowflakes swirling faster as if responding to her silent plea. Panic surged through me as I realized that this was no ordinary person. It was something far more sinister, a specter bound to this forsaken place by untold tragedy. Without warning, the figure began to dissolve into the snow, her form disintegrating like mist under the morning sun. The red eyes were the last to vanish, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of dread that clung to me like a heavy blanket. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing to comprehend what I had just witnessed, before turning and making my way back to the cabin. Upon my return, I found the front door wide open, a cold draft sweeping through the room and extinguishing the fire in the hearth. The footprints had stopped outside, but within the cabin, the atmosphere had shifted. The warmth was gone, replaced by an oppressive chill that made my skin crawl. I noticed strange symbols etched into the walls, their meaning lost to me but radiating an aura of dark energy. Terrified, I called out for help, but my voice was swallowed by the emptiness of the cabin. Hours passed without any sign of rescue, the storm still raging outside with unrelenting fury. I huddled by the now-dead fireplace, the symbols on the walls haunting my thoughts, and the memory of those red eyes fueling my fear. In the early hours of the morning, just as exhaustion was beginning to take hold, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the cabin. Relief washed over me, thinking the rescue team had arrived. But as the figure emerged from the shadows, my heart sank. It was the same woman from the clearing, her red eyes burning with an unholy light, her presence more malevolent than before. "Leave this place," she whispered, her voice a chilling blend of sorrow and rage. "You cannot escape." I backed away, my mind screaming at me to flee, but my legs refused to move. The temperature plummeted further, frost forming on the windows and encasing the room in ice. The symbols on the walls began to glow, their dark energy intensifying as the woman advanced toward me. Desperate and terrified, I reached for my phone, hoping to call for help, but it was dead. No signal could penetrate the storm's wrath. Panic surged through me as the reality of my situation sank in. I was trapped, alone with this malevolent spirit in the heart of a frozen nightmare. Summoning every ounce of courage, I confronted her, my voice trembling but resolute. "What do you want from me?" Her red eyes bore into mine, the sorrow and anger intertwined in a painful dance. "Find the truth," she whispered, her voice echoing through the cabin like a haunting refrain. "Uncover our story." Before I could respond, the cabin began to tremble, the walls cracking under the strain of the dark energy. I knew then that I had to leave, to escape the clutches of this vengeful spirit before the cabin succumbed to the storm's fury and the darkness claimed me as well. gathering my strength. I turned and sprinted towards the door, the woman's cries echoing in my ears. The storm outside seemed to intensify, the wind howling like a banshee, snow pelting against the windows with renewed ferocity. I dashed through the cabin, ignoring the frostbite that numbed my fingers and the exhaustion that threatened to overpower me. Bursting out into the storm, I raced through the forest, the footprints and symbols a constant reminder of the nightmarish ordeal I had endured. The storm raged on, but I felt an inexplicable urge to keep moving, to find my way back to civilization and escape the horrors that lingered in the shadows. Hours later, bruised and frostbitten, I stumbled upon a search party that had been dispatched after I failed to return. Relief and gratitude washed over me as I recounted my terrifying experience. The search party offering assistance and warmth. They listened with a mix of skepticism and concern, but the fear in my eyes convinced them of the truth behind my words. As I was airlifted to safety, I glanced back towards the cabin, now a mere speck in the vast, snowy expanse. The storm had subsided, leaving behind a serene stillness, but the memory of those red eyes and the sorrowful spirit remained etched in my mind. I knew that the woman's plea for truth and understanding would haunt me forever, a reminder of the thin veil between our world and the darkness that lies just beyond. Winter continued its reign over the mountains, each snowflake a silent testament to the night I faced the malevolent spirit of the snowy woods. The experience changed me, deepening my appreciation for the fragility of life and the unseen forces that shape our existence. I dedicated myself to uncovering the truth behind the tragic events that had bound the spirit to that forsaken cabin, ensuring that their stories would never be forgotten. But sometimes, on the coldest nights of December, when the wind howls just right and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a faint echo of her whisper carried by the breeze, a haunting reminder of the night I encountered the red-eyed spirit in the snowy night and the enduring power of uncovering the truth to bring peace to restless souls.